The morning sun stretched long golden shadows across the stony ground of Sidi Bouzid in Tunisia. It was November 8, 1942, and Oberstfreiter Wilhelm Schmidt crouched behind a low wall of rock, his Karabiner 98K rifle steady in his hands. The cold steel is familiar to him now as his own heartbeat after 3 relentless years of war. Load 1 round. Fire. Pull the bolt back. The empty casing spun away with a sharp metallic clink. Push forward. Chamber the next. Aim. Fire again. It was the rhythm of war, mechanical, methodical. The rhythm that had carried the German infantry across Poland, France, and deep into the heart of Russia. 5 rounds sat inside the rifle's internal magazine, each demanding precision, each fired one at a time. Across the open field, American infantry were advancing in a skirmish line, their movements crisp and confident. Schmidt had been told these men were inexperienced, soft recruits, untested in real battle. Their training, he was told, was inferior. Their weapons crude. The next 60 seconds would destroy that illusion completely. The Americans opened fire. The sound tore through the air. Not the sharp crack and pause of bolt-action rifles, but a rolling thunder of gunfire that never stopped. 8 rounds discharged as fast as the trigger could be pulled. No pause for cycling, no break in rhythm. Just steady, devastating precision. While Schmidt managed perhaps 3 shots, the American opposite him had already emptied an entire clip and was reloading. This was the M1 Garand, and it was about to shatter the foundation of German infantry doctrine. For German soldiers, trained to believe in the absolute superiority of their tactics and weapons, the psychological shock was as fierce as the rifle's firepower itself. What unfolded that morning was more than a technological surprise. It was the beginning of a tactical revolution that would force the Wehrmacht to rethink everything it knew about combat. The source of German confidence lay deep in centuries of military tradition. The Karabiner 98K, adopted on June 21, 1935, was seen as the perfect infantry weapon. Accurate beyond 500 yards, reliable in mud, frost, and heat, and simple enough for any conscript to maintain. Chambered for the powerful 7.92 by 57 mm Mauser cartridge, it could punch through cover and armor alike. In skilled hands, the Kar 98K had conquered much of Europe. German doctrine emphasized disciplined, deliberate fire, every shot counted, every bullet aimed. A trained rifleman could send about 15 rounds downrange per minute, each carefully placed. Against enemies armed with similar bolt-action rifles, Polish, French, and British forces, this balance between precision and rate of fire seemed ideal. Even the British Lee Enfield, with its 10-round magazine, was viewed by German officers as a compromise. Faster, yes, but less accurate. So when American forces landed in North Africa during Operation Torch, German intelligence believed it knew what to expect. Reports described American equipment as plentiful but unrefined, their soldiers dependent on machinery, not skill. The M1 Garand appeared in those assessments, noted but dismissed. Semi-automatic, 8 rounds, gas-operated. Interesting but hardly revolutionary, or so they thought. It was heavier than the Kar 98K, 9.5 pounds to 8.2, and supposedly less reliable. What those reports missed was that the M1 had already seen fierce combat. From December 1941 onward, American troops in the Philippines had used the Garand with lethal efficiency. Japanese soldiers, unprepared for its continuous fire, often mistook it for machine guns. In February 1942, General Douglas MacArthur praised the rifle's performance, noting how it endured the dirt and chaos of foxhole warfare. By the time the Germans faced Americans in North Africa, the Garand had already proven itself in brutal jungle conditions. And now, across the Tunisian desert, it would prove itself again, this time against Europe's best. Schmidt's unit took defensive positions, confident that disciplined fire would halt the advancing enemy. But when the Americans attacked, their rifles roared like a single, unbroken storm. It wasn't machine gun fire. It was something more precise, more relentless. German soldiers fired their 15 careful rounds per minute, but each American returned 30 or 40, striking targets with speed and accuracy that defied expectation. Every time a German lifted his head to aim, a dozen bullets cracked past. The math was merciless. In a 2-minute exchange, a German might fire 30 rounds. An American could fire 80. The difference was mechanical, but the consequences were tactical and psychological. With each shot, the Garand's gas-operated system cycled automatically. Propellant gases drove a piston, ejecting the spent shell and loading the next round in a fraction of a second. The shooter never broke aim. The rifle stayed steady, the sights unmoved. Tests at Springfield Armory proved the M1 could maintain 4-minute of angle accuracy, roughly a 4-inch grouping at 100 yards, and many rifles performed even better. It was precision married to speed. General George S. Patton would later call the M1 Garand the greatest battle implement ever devised. It wasn't mere flattery. Patton understood that this weapon had transformed infantry warfare. A single American rifleman now possessed the firepower of several German soldiers, without losing range, accuracy, or reliability. By mid-1943, entire U.S. divisions were fully equipped with the M1 Garand. Between 1937 and 1945, over 4 million rifles rolled out of American factories. 3.5 million from Springfield Armory in Massachusetts and over 500,000 from Winchester in Connecticut. By the time Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy in June 1944, nearly every American rifleman carried one. And on that cold morning in Tunisia, when Wilhelm Schmidt first faced its thunder, he realized the future of warfare had just arrived, and it was in the hands of his enemy. This marked an achievement without precedent. An army of millions, each soldier carrying a semi-automatic rifle, while their adversaries still relied on bolt-action weapons. Yet the M1 Garand's specifications told only part of its story. It chambered the .30-06 Springfield cartridge, a powerful round that had served American troops since 1906. That cartridge launched a 150-grain bullet at nearly 2,800 feet per second, delivering lethal energy even at extended range. Feeding from an 8-round en-bloc clip, the rifle accepted a metal clip inserted directly into its action. When the final shot was fired, the clip sprang free with a sharp metallic ping. Some feared the sound might betray a soldier's position, but veterans agreed it was lost in the chaos of battle. The Garand's dependability soon became legend. Whether buried in North African sand, caked in Italian mud, frozen in Northern Europe, or enduring the brutal cold of Korea, it kept firing with little maintenance. Field stripping required no tools. The bolt and operating rod could be removed, cleaned, and reassembled within minutes. German observers noted this reliability with both respect and frustration. Their defensive doctrine had long depended on machine guns for suppressive fire, leaving riflemen to focus on deliberate, aimed shots. Weapons like the MG-34 and later the MG-42 were exceptional, but they demanded crews, heavy ammunition loads, and were vulnerable to artillery. The M1 Garand changed that equation completely. Now, every American rifleman could project a volume of fire once reserved for machine gun teams. Firepower was no longer centralized. It was distributed among every man in the squad. Suppressing an American unit meant silencing 8 or 9 soldiers, each firing as if they were a crew-served weapon. The Italian campaign from September 1943 onward drove this lesson home. From the landings at Salerno through the grueling push toward Rome, German infantry repeatedly found themselves outgunned by American riflemen. A report from the 94th Infantry Division, captured after the fall of Rome in March 1944, admitted that encounters with U.S. troops usually ended with Germans pinned down by rifle fire, even when they held the higher ground. The document urged greater deployment of machine guns to offset this imbalance. Germany knew it faced a crisis, and tried to answer it. The G41, introduced in 1941, was their first real attempt at a semi-automatic service rifle. 2 competing designs appeared, the G41M from Mauser and the G41W from Walther. Both were plagued by flaws. German ordnance had forbidden drilling a gas port in the barrel, fearing wear, forcing engineers to design a cumbersome gas trap system at the muzzle. It clogged easily, added weight, and was difficult to manufacture or maintain. Only between 6,000 and 15,000 rifles were ever produced before the idea was abandoned. After examining captured Soviet SVT-40s, German designers admitted the gasport system they'd rejected actually worked. The result was the G-43, introduced in October 1943. It used a simplified gas system and detachable 10-round magazine, lighter, more reliable, and easier to handle than its predecessors. Roughly 42,000 were produced by war's end, with around 53,000 equipped with scopes for marksmen. Troops who received it valued the weapon, but it came too late and in too few numbers. For every 50 Kar 98K rifles built, only one G-43 left the factory. Most German infantrymen still carried bolt-action rifles until the final days of the war. And even those who had the G-43 found it no true rival to the M1 Garand. More complex, harder to clean in the field, and suffering from spare part shortages as German industry collapsed. The fundamental truth was clear. Germany had entered the war without an effective semi-automatic rifle, and it never caught up. The M1 Garand's influence extended far beyond its firepower. It transformed how American infantry fought. Training now focused on speed, acquiring targets quickly, firing continuously. U.S. tactics assumed that every rifleman could deliver sustained, accurate fire without pause. Squads advanced through fire and maneuver, one element suppressing while the other moved. With every soldier armed with a Garand, that doctrine became devastatingly effective. On June 6, 1944, Omaha Beach, the 352nd Infantry Division, numbering over 12,000 men, defended concrete bunkers and interlocking fields of fire. They should have been unbreakable. Yet when the Americans reached the base of those bluffs, their return fire was overwhelming. Each man carried a semi-automatic rifle and used it relentlessly. German gunners couldn't maintain aim. Dozens of rounds found their positions before they could retarget. Through the hedgerows of Normandy, at distances under 100 yards, the M1's rapid-fire ability became decisive. Traditional German tactics, a few riflemen covering while others maneuvered, collapsed under the sheer weight of continuous American fire. German soldiers were forced to stay down, pinned by relentless Garand volleys. After the war, statistical analysis by the U.S. Army's Historical Division compared reports and casualty data. The findings were consistent. American infantry inflicted casualties far beyond what their numbers suggested. Artillery, air power, and logistics played their parts, but one constant advantage stood out: the rifle itself. The M1 Garand had given the average American soldier the power to dominate nearly every firefight. Germany's final answer appeared in the Sturmgewehr 44, the world's first true assault rifle. Firing the 7.92 by 33 mm Kurz cartridge from a 30-round magazine. Capable of semi- and full automatic fire, it was revolutionary. Around 425,000 were produced, mostly in 1944 and 1945. But like the G-43 before it, the STG-44 arrived too late, and in too few hands to change the outcome of the war. Few German infantrymen ever laid eyes on one. Those who did often found themselves short on ammunition as Germany's war industry collapsed. The M1 Garand's story, however, began long before the war that made it legendary. John Cantius Garand, born January 1, 1888, in Saint-Rémy, Quebec, moved to the United States with his family in 1899. He joined Springfield Armory on November 4, 1919, dedicating nearly 20 years to refining his vision of the perfect semi-automatic rifle. Early prototypes experimented with multiple calibers and mechanisms. Initially, the U.S. Army leaned toward a .276 caliber cartridge with superior ballistics compared to the .30-06. Yet General Douglas MacArthur, serving as Army Chief of Staff, overruled that choice. He insisted the rifle continue using .30-06 ammunition to preserve existing stockpiles and ensure compatibility with machine guns. That 1932 decision delayed the program, but ultimately proved wise. Through the early 1930s, Garand continued adjusting his design. Extensive testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground and Springfield Armory revealed flaws, each of which was corrected in turn. The gas system evolved from a complex gas trap to a simpler gas port. The trigger group was refined, and the stock reshaped for comfort and control. On January 9, 1936, the weapon was officially adopted as the U.S. rifle, caliber .30 M1. Production began modestly, only a few thousand rifles in 1937 and 1938, but as war loomed, output accelerated to 600 rifles per day by January 1941. The M1 Garand would go on to serve through World War II, the Korean conflict, and even into the early years of Vietnam. It wasn't officially replaced until the M14's adoption on March 26, 1958, with the first field deliveries in mid-1959. Full transition across all units took until 1961, yet Garands continued to see use with Reserve and National Guard forces well into the 1970s. The psychological impact of the M1 on German troops was immense. The rifle embodied a level of technological superiority that contradicted everything Nazi propaganda had promised them. German soldiers had been taught to believe in the unshakable dominance of German engineering and tactics. But when disciplined, battle-hardened German riflemen found themselves consistently losing firefights to equally skilled Americans, that illusion shattered. Post-war analyses of small unit engagements revealed a clear pattern. American troops inflicted far more casualties than they suffered in direct infantry combat. The rifle each man carried made a measurable difference. American losses to German rifle fire were notably lower, while their own fire proved devastatingly effective. Superior German tactics and defensive positions could delay defeat, but not prevent it. Eventually, the sheer relentless stream of accurate fire from American rifles broke positions, suppressed defenders, and allowed U.S. squads to maneuver and destroy enemy strongpoints. The Garand's influence didn't end in 1945. It shaped the future of military small arms. The concept it demonstrated, that soldiers armed with self-loading rifles could dramatically increase their combat effectiveness without sacrificing precision, became a cornerstone of post-war firearms design. Every major infantry weapon that followed, from the AK-47 to the M16 to modern-day assault rifles, owes a conceptual debt to Garand's creation. It proved that semi-automatic operation wasn't merely viable for military use, it was essential. The encounters between German troops and American riflemen armed with M1s marked the moment when technology overtook tradition. German training, doctrine, and discipline remained superb, but skill paired with outdated equipment could not match modern innovation. The Garand gave every American soldier a fighting chance against larger, entrenched, or veteran enemy forces. It enabled them to prevail in firefights, seize fortified positions, and survive engagements that would have been hopeless with slower bolt-action weapons. From the jungles of the Philippines to the sands of North Africa, from Sicily's hills to the beaches of Normandy, through the hedgerows and across the Rhine, the M1 Garand proved itself again and again. It earned its reputation as one of history's finest service rifles, validating General Patton's famous words that it was the greatest battle implement ever devised. German soldiers learned that lesson the hard way. Across every front, they encountered opponents whose firepower their Kar 98 Burmese Chots simply could not match. The Garand made it clear, warfare had entered a new era. The age of massed infantry with bolt-action rifles was ending. Semi-automatics were the future, and America had reached it first. No matter how courageous or well-trained, German troops fought at a disadvantage in the most fundamental task of combat, hitting the enemy before being hit. The math was merciless. In the time it took a German rifleman to fire 3 precise shots from his Kar 98K, his American counterpart could unleash 8 from a Garand. When both were equally skilled, the American would land 2 to 3 times as many hits. At the squad level, that disparity became overwhelming. The M1 Garand effectively gave U.S. infantry numerical superiority in firepower, even when they were outnumbered in manpower. Post-war German theorists repeatedly identified this imbalance as a decisive factor. Former General Hans Manchufel, who commanded the 5th Panzer Army during the Battle of the Bulge, later admitted that American infantry possessed superior firepower even when German units held fortified defensive ground. The human cost of that difference showed in casualty statistics. Many factors influenced losses: artillery, terrain, air power. But in direct firefights, American units consistently inflicted more damage than they received. Rifle fire accounted for a significant portion of German casualties, and the M1 Garand's contribution to that outcome was undeniable. Ultimately, the Garand's impact on World War II went far beyond its mechanics. It symbolized American industrial ingenuity and the determination to equip every soldier with the best possible weapon. While Germany struggled with complex semi-automatic programs that never reached scale, the United States had already armed its entire army with reliable self-loading rifles before entering the war. That advantage multiplied across millions of soldiers, thousands of battles, and countless lives saved, contributing directly to Allied victory. The sound of an M1 Garand firing, the sharp crack, the ringing ping of the ejected clip, the relentless rhythm of advancing riflemen, became the soundtrack of Allied success in Europe and the Pacific. German soldiers learned to recognize that sound and to fear it. It meant they faced opponents who could lay down overwhelming, accurate fire in seconds. The M1 Garand wasn't just a weapon. It was a revolution in steel and wood. Across every front from 1941 to 1945, it proved itself the ultimate battle companion, outclassing the German Kar 98K in power, precision, and speed. Soldiers who carried it didn't just hold a rifle. They held a symbol of American ingenuity and dominance. It didn't win the war on its own. Victory demanded air power, armor, logistics, and above all, the bravery of millions. But on the ground, where every second meant life or death, the M1 Garand gave U.S. troops a crucial edge. That edge saved countless lives, turned the tide of battles, and helped bring the war to a faster end. Decades later, its echo still rings through every modern rifle carried by soldiers around the world. The Garand stands as a timeless reminder that when unmatched engineering meets human courage, history itself can be rewritten. For the Germans who faced it, the lesson was brutal yet undeniable. When superior skill meets superior firepower, defeat is only a matter of time. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more legendary tales and untold stories from World War II.